The market is recalibrating. What's happening in town is a little bit different than what's happening out in the suburbs. We're going to take a look at both in this video. There's a lot of rumblings that new construction is currently carrying the luxury market. Well, we're going to dive into that in this video as well. That and more coming up in this month's edition of Atlanta's luxury real estate market update. Let's get right into it. So taking a look at mortgage rates, these are the most recent rates as of the filming of this video, and jumbo rates have been ticking up. So they hit a low of 6.14% in October. And for the last couple of weeks, they've been ticking up. So we're at 6.43. It's the average rate. And when you take a look at the trend for actual conforming, not really going to have a whole lot of people in the luxury segment that will do conforming unless you're putting a significant amount down, which does happen. If you're doing that and you're able to get a conforming, nice thing is the conforming rates have been trending down. So we're now down to roughly 6.24. There's an ebb and flow, as we can see, as it goes up and down. So there's one more Fed meeting. We'll see. It's another token, 25 basis points. This will probably tick back up for a little bit before it corrects back down. Moving on to average and median pricing, both ticked up this past month. So the median price was 1.35, as you can see, for a very, very long time. This past month, it ticked up $15,000 to 1.365. And the average ticked up a little bit as well. We're at 1.62. It was 1.609 last month. So a little bit of an uptick with some more expensive sales. Now let's break it down by area, and we'll see there are a lot of areas where the average price moved up quite a bit this year, year over year. So Buckhead's one, it's 100,000. Another 100,000 here in Brookhaven. Take a look here. This is more than 100,000. It's 120,000 in Roswell, 80,000 in Milton, 90,000 over here in East Cobb, and then Swanee, $133,000 is what the average has moved up. Now we've had some pullbacks. The in-town market's pulled back just a little bit to drop at 50,000. Cummings down a little bit. Then you've got some marginal increases here as well. Overall, you see how the average moved. Now, from a median price perspective, a lot of these same cities and areas did the same thing, right? So Buckhead's, and to move the median, you've got to move the market to move the median. So that's 100,000 more median price in Buckhead. Look at Brookhaven. It's 140 up in Johns Creek, Roswell, Milton, all the same places, up, 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 up. Now, there are two places that have had slight pullbacks. So slight is fair for Sandy Springs. This is a bigger than just fair or slight pullback in Cumming. Look at that. So from 1.28 to 1.2, that's an $80,000 drop in the median price. So you're seeing some of these builders start to discount prices. And then as they discount prices and those close, pulling the median price down a little bit in Cumming. So lots and lots of new construction tend to talk about it every month. Now the median dollar per square foot is up in Buckhead. In town, parity. The one chart that I don't have this month, and I'll bring it back next month, is the average dollar per square foot. We were nearing $500 a square foot in Buckhead, but from a median standpoint, look at how Buckhead and in-town are practically one and the same. So while we're looking at this data, I've got a very quick announcement. In the past, when you've wanted this slide deck, I'd give it to you, but you had to give me your name and email, and I would send you an email with the information. So starting today and in every video moving forward, when you click on the link in the description in the comments that says slides, I'm going to give you that information without you having to give me anything in return. So no name, no email, it's all there. Not only is this month's slide deck there, but every single slide deck I've ever created is available for you to look at there as well. All right, let's continue this video. So that brings us to my next topic, which is going to be talking about how new construction and resale kind of work together in the market. And a lot of people seem to think that new construction is absolutely driving prices and so forth. And it is to a large extent, but not always, not everywhere. So let me show you. So overall for the greater Atlanta area for new construction homes that are $1 million above, the median price is 1.79. Now on resale, it's 1.4. So when you take a look at that, yeah, the new homes are selling for quite a bit more. In Buckhead, it's a lot more. If you're going to build brand new in Buckhead, you're selling that thing at a premium because it's already expensive to buy land, right? So 2.77 is the median price in Buckhead. Now, Alpharetta and Milton are very similar. East Cobb is right there as well. Brookhaven is a little bit higher than resale, 1.85. And then Cumming, Look at that. It's practically the same. That's surprising considering all the new construction that's being built there. So Johns Creek is almost exactly the same. And you can kind of see, right? So let's continue this story. So that's median pricing. Let's take a look at units. Now you can see here that resale makes up the lion's share of the market. So in town, there were 335 total sales, 320 of that resale. Take a look at Buckhead. It's 481. Well, 445 are resale. So it's the same thing practically everywhere where that market is just dominated by resale properties. So resale is going to drive pricing in these areas. New construction helps to complement, right? When you're seeing these ratios. So in some places, it shows you where they're building these luxury new homes like Buckhead, Brookhaven, Alpharetta, Roswell, Milton, Cumming, and East Cobb, some in Swanee. So let's go from units and look at overall volume. So no surprise. I mean, when you take a look at the resale volume, it is really, really high. But proportionally speaking, $117 million of new construction that sold in October in Buckhead is not an insignificant amount. Alpharetta is right there at 100 million, 101, right? Roswell 50, Milton 33, Cumming 43, East Cobb 53, Brookhaven 43. This is a ratio here where you could say that Brookhaven, the new construction is definitely driving the market there. And it is to a certain extent in places like Roswell when you factor in these ratios. Now, I mentioned Brookhaven and Roswell. Well, look at this chart. So this shows the percentage wise on the unit side versus the percentage side on the volume side. So from a unit perspective, Brookhaven, 16% of the sales are new construction, but it makes up 21% of the volume. In Roswell, it's roughly the same thing. These are almost identical. So 16.4 and 19.6. Alpharetta, it's a smaller percentage of units, but it makes up a bigger percentage of the volume. So yeah, to a very large extent in these specific markets that I just highlighted, the new construction sales are definitely contributing quite a bit to what's happening in the overall markets there for $1 million plus. In some of these other areas, like Milton, for instance, there are a lot of homes that are being built, but it's not driving it to the same extent. The same thing in town. Like in town, there's so much infill new construction that's going on right now, but it's such a small part of the overall market there. I mean, you take a look at units, it's less than 5%. So that's for October. There's an ebb and flow to these, but I just wanted to show. I've been talking to some people and they were just like, yeah, new construction is completely driving the market. And I'd say that it is absolutely in Brookhaven, Alpharetta, Roswell, no question. So now let's take a look at overall market total volume. I'm going to compare 2024 to 2025, and it's rolling 12. So I'm taking a look at all of the sales that happened between November of last year and October of this year and adding them all together. That's how we're getting that. And we're comparing it to the same thing the year before, November 23 to October 2024. So when you look at this, take a look at Buckhead. So Buckhead in the previous time period had almost $1 billion worth of sales. It was over that if you remove the $1 million limit that I have, but nonetheless, year over year, it's down a little bit. So from 933 to 887. So there's slightly less sales happening in Buckhead, but it's up quite a bit in town. It's up quite a bit in Alpharetta. That's a $75 million jump, 45 million in Milton. It's up and coming, up and coming, up and coming. It's up a little bit. You take a look at East Cobb, it's up. And then you've got some pullback. So Sandy Springs, Johns Creek, and Swanee. Now, I like to take a look at Alpharetta and Milton as a region and compare it to Buckhead. And that's where you take a look. And now, this year, if you take a look a year ago, right, for November 23 to October 24, there were $933 million worth of sales in Buckhead. And that was $100 million and change more than there were in Alpharetta Milton. This year, Alpharetta Milton has more combined sales in Buckhead. So I think that's interesting. It just shows that there's a lot of people who want to live out in that North Atlanta suburb area. And the luxury market is thriving over there, right? Specifically, we're going to get into stats about how it's changing a little bit. But from an overall year over year comparison, the numbers show that Alpharetta Milton has sold quite a bit of $1 million homes, put it that way. So moving on, let's take a look at where inventory levels are. So at this time of the year, you're going to have properties that are going to start to come off the market a little bit between the holidays. At the end of the year, you're going to have it peak up on the last day of the year. There's a bunch that are going to expire, and they're going to come back to market in the spring. That's kind of what happens here. You see that run up, right, in the spring market. And then you hit the top of the market in June. And then from July onwards, it's a slow drain down for inventory. It's typically the same thing with new listings coming to market. And there was a little bit of a bump here after school started. People start school, they get used to the new routines. And then you have a lot of people that are like, all right, let's put the house in the market. That typically is what happens here. And that's what that bump is. And it's been trending down over the last month as we head into the holidays. So failures are going to uptick. This red line is going to do this towards the end of the year. And then closed and pendings have been trending down overall as well. Now we're going to break this down. So new listings by month, year over year over year. I'm taking a look at 5 years worth of data. The gold line is 2025. And in terms of new listings coming to month, and in terms of new listings coming to market, new has outperformed every other year this year. It was tied with last year in August, but September and October, we've had more new listings coming to market than in previous years. So this will absolutely do this over the next 2 months, basically. So when I do these next videos, we'll see it probably in the year looking exactly like that. Now, broken down by area, you can see what it is for the overall market, but it's nice to break it down and see where the action is actually happening. So in town, less new listings coming to market. Same thing in Buckhead. Look at this jump up in Alpharetta. So October this year had so many more properties coming to market than October of last year. Yeah, and then you had some incremental ups in these areas here. And Sandy Springs had quite a bit less. So that's part of the thing with Sandy Springs. I mean, volume's down significantly, but there's just a lot of people are not selling their houses in Sandy Springs. So there's less homes to sell. So it's going to show, it's going to skew the data. You're going to look at it and say, wow, the market's crashing there because volume's down. It's not the case. It's just less people are selling their homes in Sandy Springs. And you can see here in October, it's a big drop. It's over, I mean, it's 11 less units year over year, but percentage wise, it's a big drop, right? So let's look at actives. So we've had more active inventory year over year. We're outpacing all the previous years. Last year had more than the previous years, and this year there's more than last year. So you're starting to have more choices out in the luxury market. What does that look like by area? So of course, Alpharetta actives are up. Look at this. This is part of the reason why you're seeing a little bit of a pullback in coming. So lots and lots of demand for coming, but there's so much inventory now. So we'll see how that all plays in. Buckhead has less inventory. You'll see why this also plays in when we look at months of supply and what type of market it is in just a couple of slides. So when we factor in pendings, we've also generally this year, which is really good for the luxury market, with the exception of July and parts of August, outperformed every previous year for the number of properties that have gone under contract. So that's really good, right? Like it's not, we're not seeing the line here like we're seeing in the greater Atlanta video for the overall housing market. The luxury market in Atlanta is actually doing quite well. So from a breakdown per area, this is not surprising. You have more houses to choose from, more going under contract, but you saw 2 slides ago that coming also had significantly more properties in the market this year, but look at the pullback on pendings. So that's interesting. Alpharetta's hot, coming, there's a bit of a pullback right now. So no other major surprises on this list. Let's go and take a look at closings. So generally speaking, we also outperformed previous years, and then we were in line with previous years. And then now we're back to these last couple of months outperforming previous years for closings. So they're 2 very different markets. You look at the overall housing market in Atlanta, then you look at the luxury segment, and the luxury segment is quite healthy. The overall market is starting to shift, right? We're starting to see many parts of the metro cracking right now. So Interesting. They're two different worlds. And here's where it breaks down. So, of course, we're up in Alpharetta, no surprise. Down and coming, also no surprise. Up in Milton, and look at in town. That's a big jump up. That's an additional almost 20. It's 19 units more year over year. So big jump. And then Buckhead just had less properties closing in October. So failures are withdrawns and expireds. So you're going to start to see more I mentioned in December. It's just how the year ends. But this is interesting. See how they're down. But at the same time, proportionally speaking, you have less active inventory. So you have less active inventory that can ultimately fail. So they're up in Alpharetta, but they're up and coming. And they're up quite a bit in East Cobb. Like that's a big jump in East Cobb from 9 to 23. So it's something to keep an eye on to see if that's going to start trickling down into other parts. But you go back to the last couple ones, like closings by area, East Cobb is up a little bit year over year. But that's why I like looking at failures, because they can somewhat be a lead indicator, not a lag indicator, to see what's happening, what may happen over the next couple of months. So I'm going to keep an eye on that specifically for East Cobb. Now let's look at pending ratio. So the pending ratio, I've mentioned it. I think if you're watching these videos from a month-to-month standpoint, you know what this is by now, because I've covered it in a couple of videos. If this is your first time watching, thanks for watching. And two, the pending ratio is basically you take a look at the properties that went under contract and you divide them by the sum of pendings and actives together. It shows ultimately if you have X number of properties for sale in an area, call it 10, and you have a pending ratio of 25%, then of those 10, 2.5 should go under contract in that next 30-day window. That's kind of what we're looking at here. So year over year, you're seeing some increases in some areas that favor the seller and some decreases that favor the buyer. And there's a big decrease on this. I'm sure that you're looking at it right now. But let's talk about the increases, because as a home seller, you want this to be as high as possible. As a buyer, when it's lower, it means that there's opportunity for you, because if you don't put an offer on a house and it goes under contract, chances are it's going to sit for a while, right? And if the ratio is higher, then there's a higher number of properties going under contract compared to what's available. And as a seller, that's going to make you happy. So in town, it's up. Buckhead, it's up. Brookhaven, it's up. Alpharetta is up year over year in the luxury space. So these are all very encouraging signs for sellers in these markets. And then there's Johns Creek. It's the elephant in the room. These last couple of months, Johns Creek has been absolutely on a tear. But right now, proportionally speaking, this time last year, we had a pending ratio of 26%. It was the highest pending ratio in Atlanta. And in 1 year, year over year, we went from having the best pending ratio to the worst. What the heck happened, right? I'll show you. So I broke it down a little bit, and we can look at it this way. So this is John Creek's traditional pending ratio. You can kind of see down here, this is lower than what it's been over the last couple of years. And at its highest, when you take a look at the ratio in December of 2023, it was 56%. It was also quite high in February of this year at 44%. So take a look at this. Look at this multi-year trend. So in October of 2023, it was 40%. In October of last year, it was 26. And now we're down to 6 we'll call it 7. And this is a multi-year downward trend that looks terrible, right? So let's break it down on the next slide. We'll look at actives versus pendings in Johns Creek. So right now, the reason the ratio is so low, I mean, you can kind of see them separate here, but there are 29 active listings that are above $1 million, and only 2 went under contract. When you look at October of 2024, there were 20 and 7 went under contract. And then in October of 23, there were 8 that were pending and 12 that were on the open market. So 12 to 20 to 29. At this time of the year, this is a trend, multi-year trend that is increasing. And then the pendings, it's not the most elegant line, but that's also going the other way. So what I see when I look at this is I see a city that is becoming much more dependent on the hot selling season to sell. It's becoming more cyclical, more entrenched in that, because this is 2 years ago, this is last year, and this is this year at this time of the year. So if you're a buyer at this time of the year and you look at all of this inventory and you're looking in Johns Creek, this could be an opportunity to potentially get a property for a little bit less if the sellers need to sell and they can't wait until springtime. Because if they don't sell it to you, they could be on the market beyond a time allotment that's going to meet their goals. And so they might be a little bit more open to negotiating right now. If you're a seller and you're looking at this, properties right now are not going under contract. You can see that they are, but very marginally. And if you looked at last year, there were 7, and in December there were 4, and then in January there were 2. It's not going to get better. So if your property's been in the market for just a little bit, it might be time to allow it to breathe for a little bit, to take it off for the holidays, and to consider going back to market in late February, early March. That's what the data is showing. Okay, moving on. Months of supply. So we know that this red zone is the balanced market. The red dot here is where you go from a balanced market to a buyer's market. Well, there's one city here, one area that has gone into buyer's market territory, and that's coming. So I've been ragging on it a little bit these last couple of months because it's a great place. Don't get me wrong. Forsyth County continues to be a very, very great place to invest, especially over the next, I think, decade or two, with what they're doing along the but Georgia 400 with the extra lanes. It's going to bring Forsyth County that much closer to the perimeter. The schools are fantastic. The property taxes are fantastic. You are still generally able to get land where even the builders, when they're buying land in Forsyth County to build, the houses tend to have a little bit more separation beside them. So if you don't have to commute to downtown Atlanta, maybe you still do, it's still a great place to consider. It's just that right now, the months of supply, doing something that it hasn't in a while. It's finally an opportunity for buyers. So if you want to live in Forsyth County, now is the time to start looking to see what you can do. Now, the bigger builders, they're not discounting pre-sales. So when you go into the neighborhoods, you'll have some good incentives on standing inventory. They still have some decent incentives to spark pre-sales, but they're not discounting the prices of the pre-sales. Now, if a spec home has been in the market for a little while, you have some possibilities there. They might start to consider lower prices, and you don't necessarily have to offer or pay what they're telling you the price is. You can tell them that you want to make your own offer and see what they come back at, right? So there are parts of the market where it's not becoming more of a balanced market. It's becoming a little bit more of a seller's market. And in town, that's down. Take a look at Buckhead. Last year, Buckhead at this time of the year was in balanced market territory. And look at this drop. That's a huge drop in favor of sellers. So in a balanced market, it's an equitable market. Buyers get discounts off the price. They get concessions to a certain extent, repairs, but it's nothing crazy. When you get onto this side, now you get a lot more leverage as a buyer. You tend to get better deals overall. When you're underneath this line, it's still a seller's market. So the lower the number, like you look at Johns Creek, I just got done talking about Johns Creek. There's still, that's last year, it was 2.4 months of inventory. This year, even with everything going on with the 2 properties going under contract, it's still a seller's market. Even though you've got the 29 listings and only 2 pendings, it was still, if no new homes hit the market, take 2.9 months on average to sell everything, right? But there's still an opportunity right now for the reasons that we just covered. There's nothing that, it's a very cyclical, seasonal part of town. And as a buyer, you can use that to your advantage. So where we have a couple of cities that have gone from cresting balance to being in balance, we'll look at Milton. A little bit of a pullback in Alpharetta, but that's still there. Suwanee was in very nice seller market territory last year, and now it's a balanced market. East Cobb, a little bit of an uptick, big uptick here in Sandy Springs. That could very well be in a balanced market next year. And then for the greater Atlanta area, we're at 5.4 months. And this is greater Atlanta for $1 million plus properties. So it's everywhere. So this next chart here is going to show you the same months of supply, but rather looking at it year over year from October 24 and comparing it to October 25, we're going to take a look at how it trended over that time period from month to month standpoint. And I don't want to have 12 lines on this one chart, so I broke it down. So this one has In-Town, Brookhaven, Roswell, Alpharetta, East Cobb, and Buckhead. You see here that this shaded area is your balance market, and the red line at the top is the market threshold for becoming a buyer's market. So look at Buckhead. Buckhead started the year in balance, and then over the course of the year, it got down to like that 3.94% that you've got here. So it's back in seller's market territory. And you can kind of see that there's some ebb and flow over the course of the year, but I wanted to specifically show you what was happening with Buckhead because this is a market that is shifting. I mentioned the roller coaster in the in-town market versus the northern suburbs. Well, this illustrates that very well. Look at Buckhead bucking that trend. And then over the last 30 days, certainly, we're seeing a downtrend in in-town and Brookhaven. So the three in-town markets here are doing very well in terms of months of inventory favoring the seller. And then over the last couple of months, it's been roughly the same thing for Alpharetta, Roswell, and East Cobb. So let's take a look at a couple of other areas. And on this one, we've got Cumming, Johns Creek, Milton, Sandy Springs, and Swanee. So look at Cumming. Cumming started cresting balance, and over the last couple of months, it crossed over into a buyer's market territory, and it's still trending. Like that's a trend that started in December, so almost a whole year ago, and it's been going up like that. So that doesn't look like it's going to be pulling back anytime soon. So again, it reinforces why it's a great time to buy. Do you want to buy at the top of the market when everything is the most expensive and you pay? No one wants to pay tops, but people, it's like with finance and stocks. People tend to buy when there are green candles and they don't buy when the candles are red. Real estate's kind of like that. When you have certain areas that are pulling back, people get worried and they don't want to buy. But I would argue that in Forsyth County, it's interesting case by case, but there's some good opportunities to buy now, and it's going to pay off. My projection is that it'll pay off quite a bit over the next decade. So in some of these other areas, you're seeing an upswing. Well, not some, all of them, especially since the summer, have had an upswing. Part of that is a seasonality to it, but where it's bucking the trend, when you look at Swanee and Sandy Springs, these have been going up, and Milton as well, pretty much all year, right? So those are markets that are shifting in favor of the buyer as well. Johns Creek is still firmly a seller's market. You can kind of see where that is. It'll take a while for that to change. And when we get to spring market, it's going to recalibrate and come back down. And it's just, that's a very, very school driven market as we're seeing. Next, we're going to take a look at median days on market. So the median for Metro Atlanta right now is 22. And when you take a look at some of these areas, mentioned Johns Creek, even though the market's slowing down a little bit, you've got less pending, so you've got more active inventory. On average, it's still taking 8 days to sell something when it goes under contract. So Milton, that's a big jump up. Roswell, that's a big jump up. And then Cumming, these aren't surprising, but they're adding quite a bit of days. You factor that in, it's 20 extra days at the median of the market for Cumming. East Cobb and Swanee are up as well. That's a 3x increase in Swanee. It's huge. Sandy Springs, a little bit of a pullback. Brookhaven's up. Buckhead, a little bit of a pullback. So again, shows with the exception of Brookhaven on this, the in-town markets are faring quite well. And then list to sales ratio. Overall, it's 96.3%. It was a little bit higher last year, so there's a little bit of a pullback there. But look at in-town. In-town and Buckhead mentioned that the in-town markets are doing a little bit better. So again, these are completely separate zips. There's no overlap for this data between in-town and Buckhead. Both of those markets have year-over-year appreciations. Same thing with Sandy Springs. So those homes are getting more relative to their original asking price. And in other markets like Johns Creek and Roswell and Alpharetta and Milton, that looks like a big step down, a big ladder going all the way down to Cumming. You're getting less and less compared to what the original asking price is. So to my point, in Cumming right now, the typical home over $1 million is selling for almost a 6% discount relative to their asking price. And last year it was 4%. So that's not quite a 2% drop. It's like a 1.5% drop when you factor it this way. But that's still a big difference year for just a year over year change. You don't have drops like that everywhere. You've got them in East Cobb though, and you also have them in Swanee. So if these are parts of town that you potentially have interests in, know that it looks based on properties that have closed that sellers are a little bit more negotiable. So how many sellers actually got their price? So 68% of all listings over $1 million sold for under ask, and last year was 71. So if this is going down in the rest of the market, by the way, this is trending the other way. But full price, 16%, that's up 2%. And then look at that above. So the luxury market, when it's priced well and you're in certain parts of town that are highly desirable, you're still getting multiple offers and prices are still going up. 16%, 1 out of 6 and change properties are selling for more than the asking price. So we're going to take a look at price reductions. This is based on active inventory. And if you take a look at a place like, let's say Buckhead, for instance, half of the listings that are currently on the market have had one or more price reductions of an average of 5.7%. That's how to read this. So Brookhaven right now, only 15% of those listings have had price reductions. And when they have, they've been at 6.4%. So right now for the greater Atlanta area, it's about a third at 7.4%. So some of the bigger ones on this list, I'd say, take a look at Sandy Springs, a quarter. When they've reduced, it's been 8%, and you have 8% here in Milton. So this is a little bit surprising, but in Cumming, it's only 27% of the listings that have had price reductions. Now let's look at that based on pendings. So in Johns Creek, there are 2 pendings. Neither of them needed reduction. So that's why that shows nothing here. But when you take a look at Cumming, 42.9% of those properties that are currently under contract had price reductions. So when you factor in these 2 things, 27% of the active, so there's 73% of the listings don't have them. But in order to go under contract, 42 needed price reductions. So there are properties that are sitting on the market in a place like Cumming right now that generally do need a price reduction, but they haven't had one yet. If they do, in 43% of the cases, those properties are going under contract, and they're having reductions of 5.4% on average. So some of the highest under contract price reductions, Alpharetta, but that's really a small percentage. You factor in 9.5% of the inventory that's under contract has had reductions, and 9 out of 10 homes that are under contract didn't need a reduction to get under contract. And then East Cobb 7.2 and Swanee 7.3, right? And that brings us over here to showing activity. So a lot of people are looking currently in Alpharetta. It tends to be this way every single month, and there's an increase of activity year over year. If you look at in-town, a lot more people looking in town this year relative to last, and Buckhead is up as well. So up in Roswell, up and Cumming, where we're seeing a little bit of a pullback. Less people looking in Brookhaven, marginally less in Sandy Springs, even though there's more active inventory in Johns Creek, there are less people looking. Cyclical, seasonal, right? Keep coming back to that. And look at Swanee, same thing. And when you break this down, we'll look at showings per listing. This is a big drop when you factor in Johns Creek. So the amount of interest per listing last year was really, really high. The average for Atlanta is 3, and now Johns Creek has dropped under that. Honestly, like these next 90 days, if you're a buyer in Johns Creek, you might have an opportunity to get something that you would get at the best deal of the whole year before spring market drives that back up. You have to find a seller that needs to sell now and they can't wait for spring market. And then you'd be able to negotiate a better deal, potentially. That's what the data is showing. Swanee, look at this drop. It's another really big drop year over year in the amount of interest in that area. So interest is up in town. It's up in Buckhead. But these are big drops, right? And then here we've got showings depending. So we take a look at the overall number of showings relative to the number of properties that went under contract. And it looks like you need a ton of showings in Johns Creek in order to go under contract. So let me show you what that gap looks like if we look at it this way. So this is the gap between what is on the market and how many were needed ultimately to go under contract. So at the rate of active properties in the market in Johns Creek relative to the ones that are going under contract, you would hypothetically need 19.1 showings to attract that offer and go under contract. That's one way of reading this data. So if you want these slides, they're free. Click the link in the description and that first comment. You don't even have to sign up. They're right there for you. If you do want to sign up for something, consider joining the newsletter. If you like what I talk about, you'll love the newsletter. It comes out every week or so. And if you're going to watch more videos today, this is the overall Atlanta housing market video. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. This is the one where I focus on the in-town market, specifically in-town neighborhoods. It's a good video if you want to know what's happening inside the perimeter. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.